This is a Sandy Boy Productions podcast.
Welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast, where we help women remove the overwhelm of living their most holistic life. This is the place to find evidence-based nutrition tactics, healthy lifestyle and wellness tips, abundance mindset, and easily implementable low-tox living strategies so you can rise up to your full potential and protect your family's health. I'm your host, Stacey Heine, certified holistic nutritionist and better living advocate. Now, let's get empowered with some simple swaps that make a big impact for optimal wellness.
Welcome back to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. Today's guests are James and Dahlia Marin. They were some of my first guests on the Urban Pharmacy Podcast, and I am so excited to have them back on the show. If you don't remember who they are, let me tell you a little bit more about them. James and Dahlia are registered dietitians, and they are the founders of Marin to Health, which is the first 100% plant-based SIBO and IBS nutrition program. And they have an integrative dietetic practice, which brings together the best in medical nutrition therapy to bridge the gaps in health maintenance, disease prevention, and disease reversal. Their mission at Marin to Health is to prevent, treat, and reverse disease, combining integrative techniques like whole food plant-based nutrition, Eastern modalities, and Western techniques to promote an optimal, healthy lifestyle using the best of everything we have at our disposal. So today in the episode, we really break down gut health a little bit more than we did before, because that's what James and Dahlia do best. And we also talk about their new product called Gut Nurture, which if you're interested in getting, I put a link down in the show notes to get, because it is a awesome powder that you can put into water and drink and get prebiotic fiber and so many more benefits for your gut, all in just one drink. And Dahlia actually was the creator of it, and she kind of geeks out with us as we go through each ingredient and why it's beneficial for our gut, and helps us understand a lot of different ways that we can really nurture our gut. And James, of course, is such a wealth of knowledge, and both of them together are just an incredible powerhouse. So you're going to really love this episode if you are into gut health, and I can't wait to hear what you think of it. Make sure that if you do listen to it, that you tag us and share it. And here's your reminder that the doors are open to my monthly membership called Holistic Mama Society. This is a membership community for women who want to take control of their health naturally and help themselves and their families live well. I want you to imagine this as your reality. You wake up feeling energized and ready for what the day brings, even if that means sibling fights and multiple messes. The meals of the day are prepped for you and your family, and you are loving them in all of their flavors. You spend time connecting your mind and body every single day, even if it's just 15 minutes or a walk outside or maybe a Pilates session. You know why you're showing up each day. You have a sense of purpose outside of the everyday have-tos. And you found that nature is so grounding for you while you navigate the many hats that you're wearing. If you're currently feeling overwhelmed and stuck with your health, and you're ready to take control once and for all and feel your best in your own body, you should absolutely join us on the other side of HMS. We have weekly calls, we have a rock star community, and you can also upgrade to one-on-one and work with me so that I can help guide you in a more personalized way. Regardless, you're gonna come in and have access to all of our past trainings, plus over 70 whole food plant-based recipes to help you get on your way to nourish your body in the best way possible. If you have any questions, you can always find me on social media or schedule a discovery wellness chat in the show notes down below. Otherwise, we really hope to see you on the other side. James and Dahlia Marin, welcome back to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you for having us back
again. We loved last time, so we're excited for this time.
Everybody loved the episode as well. It was very early on in the Urban Pharmacy Podcast journey. And gosh, you were one of my first guests. And now we're almost to 100 episodes, which is super exciting. And we have not nearly talked enough about gut health. And everybody has gut questions. And I think that you guys are so incredibly knowledgeable, and just you speak layman's terms and really help people understand what we can do to better our health via our gut. So we have lots of things to talk about today. I want to know from you guys, because it has been a while. It's been over a year since you've been on. I'm pretty dang sure. Yeah. What have you been up to in the last year?
Nothing at all, though. It's been a tremendous year of growth. Like, we're truly blessed, quite honestly. So our first and foremost, our private practice. So we do see patients around the world. We've added multiple dietitians to our team. So we're going to be anywhere from 7 to 8 dietitians in Married to Health in 2023.
And all integrative, all plant-based or plant-forward. So we're very intentional of who we invite into our space.
Yeah, very intentional with that. So continue to grow there, just making really great connections in the community and just working on a lot of projects behind the scenes. We launched Gut Nurture, which I should say, I got to give Dahlia all the credit. Dahlia sees a majority of the gut health SIBO IBS, just really, really complex gut cases in the practice. And she basically based Gut Nurture off of what her patients needed, right? Like the feedback she was hearing from her patients and going, okay, you need this. And maybe it's not quite there in the supplement realm, or the formulation is missing a little bit of that. And so Dahlia formulated Gut Nurture, and then it speaks to our intentions around gut health, right? You are an amazing inner ecosystem when it comes to your gut health. That's what we're always trying to educate people on. And it's not so much like, I got to take this and I got to take that, like keep putting in, but it's more of making sure you're nurturing what's already there, right? And I think the best analogy, which is perfect for the setting here where we are, is a garden, right? Or a farm. Like, you could have the best heirloom seeds, the best possible organic, biodynamic seeds, whatever you want to say. But if your soil is not healthy, those seeds are going to have a hard time growing, right? So it's this idea that you need to nurture your inner soil, which is your gut microbiome, which is your mucosal layer. So that's really Gut Nurture in a nutshell, is saying, we want to formulate something that's a prebiotic and a postbiotic and gives your inner ecosystem what it needs to thrive, so that when you do plant those seeds from your food and your environment, and you're doing healthy lifestyle improvements, your garden is just going to flourish, right? So yeah.
So that was a really fun project.
Yeah, and you're growing. It's amazing. Like, if I were to go back to school and become a dietitian, I would absolutely apply to work for Married to Health and Mastering Diabetes. Like, you guys are just, you're the best. And
thank you.
This is incredible. I want to talk actually more about Gut Nurture. I didn't know at what point we would do that, but I think right now is a perfect time to do that, because James, you mentioned postbiotics, prebiotics, let's talk briefly about those, the fundamental equation, the pre, post, and pro, and what we need to do, what that means, because a lot of people don't know what that means. And then I want to talk about the ingredients specifically in Gut Nurture and why they're used and how they feed our farm. Our gut farm.
And our gut farm. We call our inner ecosystem, because it's such a great analogy. And first and foremost, we've been saying this a lot. We've been saying this for a long time, but we truly believe your inner ecosystem is the most important ecosystem on this planet, right? It has massive ripple effects. So if we take care of our inner ecosystem, if we care about our inner ecosystem, all other ecosystems are taken care of. So with that in mind, the idea of pre, pro, post, the analogy goes back to plants again, right? Think of prebiotics as the compost and the mulch you're putting on the soil. It's fiber, right? It's breaking down that fiber. So essentially it's plants and plant foods you're eating. So think of it as that that compost and that mulch. And then the probiotic is that seed that is growing into a plant, right? And it needs that compost and that mulch to really thrive and have all the nutrients it needs. And then the fruit from that plant, whether that plant is an apple tree or a fig tree or a kale stem or whatever it is, what you're picking from that plant is that postbiotic. It's that byproduct of this healthy relationship. And then so just like in the garden space, you can have a variety of postbiotics, aka fruits and vegetables, right? In the gut, these microbes can also make a variety of postbiotics, so short chain fatty acids and amino acids. And I mean, it's pretty amazing what it can make. And then that is feeding that ecosystem in and of itself. So that's the short version of understanding pre, pro, and post. And yeah, and then you can.
I think just to give a little bit more context, because it can get overwhelming. People are like, well, there are 20 different prebiotics I hear about. There is inulin, and there is acacia, and there's partially hydrolyzed guar gum, and there's all these different options. And of course, then we have insoluble fiber and soluble fiber that's available in foods that we eat. So that's always the best place to start. Start eating more plant foods and start figuring out which ones you're tolerating and which ones you're not tolerating, so we can start figuring out why. Because plants in and of themselves, they will have two main types of prebiotic fiber. They're going to have soluble fiber. And I always say, think of this as kind of cleaning up the garden, if you will. Maybe you have like an indoor garden, or, you have a really beautiful garden space. So around your plants, you want to make sure that you're sweeping. So that way there's not just dirt and, there's not just mess everywhere. And then you want to mop as well. So that soluble fiber is one that's going to drink up water. It's going to really hydrate those plants. It's going to really ensure that rainfall, whatever, the water that you're watering on them, it gets absorbed. And then the seeds are reaping those benefits. So you want that. And then you also want that insoluble fiber, again, that broom, that roughage. It's not necessarily going to be digested all the time, but it's going to be fermented by those seeds, by the bacteria and other microbes in your gut. So food is always a great place to start. Eating a wide variety of foods, whether that's one that's higher in soluble fiber and gooey, like okra, aloe,
chia seeds,
chia, oats, cactus, things like that. Predominantly soluble fiber, or it can be something very insoluble, more rough, like kale or apples. So maybe it's not going to get as gooey when you cook it, or celery perhaps. But nevertheless, you do really want to incorporate as much variety as possible with your food first. And then if you want to sprinkle something else in addition, there are so many options that are out there to complement your nutrition. But it's really identifying which one is right for the person, because sometimes I'll have patients who come in and they're like, I started taking acacia fiber powder, and this person maybe has raging allergies, or they're very sensitive and they have a lot of histamine sensitivity. And they're like, it made me feel worse. I got really bloated. My stomach was in pain. And I was like, well, there might be cross reactivity with things you're allergic to. So maybe for you, you need something more hypoallergenic. So let's switch you over to something like partially hydrolyzed guar gum. Or you have people who are like, I'm really bloated, but I know I'm constipated. So I want to try to add more fiber in addition to what I'm already eating. So maybe we'll start with psyllium. But we wanted to make sure that we incorporated that, since we're talking about gut nurture, into the blend, where we wanted it to be one that has a lot of benefits. So the main fiber that we chose to add was partially hydrolyzed guar gum. It's called sun fiber, and it comes from guar beans, and it's a great low FODMAP. So it's low fermentation fiber. And it also has been shown in studies to really feed your anti-inflammatory bacteria and can even bind to certain types of inflammatory bacteria and other microbes. For example, ones that create this sulfur gas in the gut. If anyone's having that like sulfury rotten egg smelling gas, this can be helpful for that because it will bind to them and try to bring them out. So that prebiotic is so important, because again, if you don't have the right type of mulch or soil for your seeds, like James said, they're just not going to thrive. Mm-hmm. And I think for a long time, people were so focused on the seeds. They were like, well, what probiotic should I take? And it's, again, if you have terrible soil or very unhealthy soil, you could be wasting all of your time, energy, finances on really trying to find these perfect seeds. So really make sure that the environment is healthy before you're trying to grow more in that environment. Mm-hmm. So that was so important to us.
So can we talk about real quick? I have heard about, what's the difference between partially hydrogenated guar gum and guar gum? Because I've seen, is that synonymous? Because I've seen guar gum added to foods. Is it the same?
So when it's partially hydrolyzed, it means that they're chemically processing it a little bit, so it can have a little bit more of that, again, binding effect to some of those inflammatory microbes. It also breaks it down, the proteins in the guar bean itself, so it makes it just easier to absorb. So when you're hydrolyzing things, you're breaking down the proteins into very small, easily absorbed molecules. So it's not as large, it's less likely to cause bloating, it's less likely to cause discomfort. Guar gum, it's added usually as an emulsifier to food, and an emulsifier is binding oil to water. So it can be used in that sense in food, and you can buy guar gum commercially. When it's partially hydrolyzed, easier to digest and absorb, and also will have a little bit more of that binding capacity to some of those inflammatory microbes.
Okay, so hydrolyzed, not hydrogenated. My bad. Okay. Yeah. Want to make sure I was saying the right thing there. And then also just speaking about the acacia powder. Yeah, that was something that I tried thanks to Dr. B's masterclass, which I've taken multiple times. And I know that you guys are part of that. And I learned so much from you guys, as always. And the acacia powder, it just did not work for me. It did not work. Not at all. Made things worse. Backed me up worse. So, okay, good to know. So, all right, continue on with the ingredients that are in this amazing gut nurture.
Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that the prebiotic was the star, because that's so important. Again, the soil. We recognized also that we wanted to help create an environment that is going to nurture the microbes already within. So again, like I said, for a long time, we focused on adding more probiotics. And I don't think a lot of people realize we already have thousands of strains of probiotics that already live in us. So why not take care of who we already have here rather than trying to add more, really create a healthy environment for our seeds within. And then if that soil is really healthy, really thriving, then we'll try to grow new things in there. But we wanted to try to make sure that we were adding things to help balance out that environment, like the partially hydrolyzed guar gum. And we also wanted to make sure that we were helping to balance that environment through motility. So some of the ingredients that are in there are for balance, and then others are for motility. So things in addition to the partially hydrolyzed guar gum that are in there for balance are things like molybdenum. Not a lot of people have heard of molybdenum.
I was like, what is
that? And it's amazing. I feel like it's one that needs to be studied a lot more, because there are some really good studies on it, not nearly enough, but I've used it for years with my patients and they found, oh my goodness, this really does help. So molybdenum is a trace mineral. It's actually naturally found in soil, or it should be naturally found also in our gut, or microbes can synthesize it. But molybdenum is a trace mineral that is actually very important in the balance of iron, copper, and zinc. And so we know those are three extremely important nutrients to our energy, our blood flow, our gut barrier, especially zinc and copper. So in the case that those are off, I have a lot of patients who come and maybe they have an inflammatory condition and their iron is completely off because the inflammation is destroying their red blood cells and their iron stores are low. Or maybe they're a female who has very heavy cycles and her iron is low as well. Whatever the case, if that iron, copper, zinc balance is off, molybdenum is usually off as well. And so what I tend to find is, one, it will help with iron absorption. So for my patients with low iron, molybdenum can actually, it's been shown in studies to help with iron absorption, and it can help increase iron levels a little bit more quickly. And two, molybdenum is involved in the sulfur breakdown pathway. So we usually are promoting these sulfur-rich foods because they contain that antioxidant sulforaphane. So important for decreasing inflammation, to support liver health, to do so many incredible things in the body. But if that sulfur does not get properly broken down, because maybe we don't have the pieces, the constituents in the body to help you break down the sulfur, and you have an overgrowth of what's called sulfur-reducing bacteria like Vibrio and other bacteria in the gut, they will use that sulfur that's improperly broken down, and they'll create something called hydrogen sulfide gas. And this type of gas is very irritating to nerves. So it can affect your gut motility, because your gut is the second most innervated place in the body outside of the brainstem. We just have thousands and thousands of nerves in the gut. And then it can irritate the liver, which also has a lot of nerves running through it. It can irritate other places in the body. It can also create lots of pain from the inflammation and the nerve irritation. And then that hydrogen sulfide gas also creates, again, that sulfury smelling gas. So for those who do have this like rotten egg smell, sulfury smelling gas, some of my patients tell me like, oh my gosh, my partner won't even sleep in the same room as me because my gas is so bad.
Clear room.
It smells like a barn. Sometimes my patients will tell me that. So they will report back and say, oh my gosh, that molybdenum stuff is really helping me. So I wanted to make sure to add that in to help with the balance as well.
Just to add, I know this can seem very complex, but really our goal here, it kind of is taken from ancient like permaculture techniques in a way of really saying, okay, let's say you have a piece of land and there's nothing on it. Maybe it's desolate and the dirt is like solid rock. You really have to just reach a tipping point before the land starts taking care of itself. And that's basically an ancient permaculture technique. And for those that don't know, permaculture is really just, it's helping different ecologies work in synergy, right? And that's essentially what we wanted to do with the gut, is go, how can we help our microbes and the mucosal layers and the surrounding organs and the gut lining? I mean, every facet of the gut just start working together and flow again, because that's really what our bodies want to do. They want to work together in this harmony, whether you call it eubiosis or homeostasis. There's lots of words for this, but it's working in harmony together. What we're seeing, again, this chronic disease wave we're seeing, whether it's gut and diabetes and thyroid and autoimmune across the board, it's really just a dysmotility, dysbiosis. It's just overall disconnection, right? So really with this, it's not this supplement, or this complement, we like to call it, is not trying to replace anything. It's just really trying to get your body to this nice tipping point where then it starts to just flow and become in balance, again, like it should be, like our bodies want to go back to. And so sometimes even with gardening or with landscaping and farming, you need to put in some inputs and soil amendments and some compost here and there. And then eventually life starts taking over. You start to see from the micro level in the soil to then the macro level of more birds and more insects. And all of a sudden you have this teeming biodiverse ecosystem. That same macro principle is this micro principle that we're really taking into effect with gut nurture and with our practice in general. So just wanted to add that to kind of pull it together a little bit.
Can you explain what was that again that you said, this word that you just said, this
molybdenum?
What is causing us to be deficient in that, do you think?
So I think it's a couple things. One, our food is a lot more sterile than it used to be because, again, molybdenum is found, it's a trace mineral, so it's found in soil. I think our food is more sterile. We peel, unfortunately, a lot of the fruits and vegetables that people really, the small amount that they are eating, because really only 3 to 5% of Americans are even eating their fruits and vegetables. And then of that, most people are peeling off the skin, which is rich in the minerals. And then our soil quality, I think, has changed over time as well. So I think all those things are factoring into it. And again, I think when our iron levels are off, that's going to offset these other things. So we were just really intentional about saying, okay, what's going to decrease the inflammation, which is why we added ginger. So we added high dose ginger for that and to get that upper motility. We wanted to make sure that we added in B vitamins, which are so important as well for motility. So we wanted to say, okay, why is this missing? It is missing. Why is it missing? And then how can we nurture the rest of the system so that way, again, like James was saying, you can get to that tipping point where the body is maintaining its own homeostasis. And this isn't a forever thing.
Right. Yeah. So what do you suggest when people start taking this? How long do you think that people need to take this? I mean, I know everybody is going to be so different, but from patients of yours, like, have you had success stories, after just 30 days of use, or is there like a standardized suggestion that you guys have? Because I'm definitely starting to suggest this to my clients too, because it seems as though most people have digestive issues in one way or the other. And you guys have also talked a lot about motility, and I want to for sure talk about constipation. Once we're done with this gut nurture thing, I want to stay focused on this supplement first, and then we're going to get into some more questions about motility and stuff. But what are you guys seeing in regards to success, and how long and how many times a day?
Yeah. So we are recommending trying it for about 3 months, once a day at least. But it depends, because feedback that we've gotten is really strong on ginger. For us, we like the ginger taste. And we wanted it to be strong in ginger because we wanted it to be a therapeutic dose of ginger, which is why it has that 350 milligrams to be anti-inflammatory. We've suggested to people you can split it up. If you need to split it up in 3 different doses and you're doing 1/3 of a teaspoon 3 times a day, great. If you can handle the 1 teaspoon once a day, great. But try to get in that 1 teaspoon, whether it's once, twice, 3 times in the day. I've had some patients say after 2 weeks, they really start feeling the effects. They're less bloated. They're having better motility, better, more complete bowel movements. Their gas is less stinky. They're having less reflux.
And patients also talk about nausea as well, especially some patients who are like, I had COVID and this was the only thing that helped me with my nausea. And I was so nauseous with my COVID, and like gut nurture was amazing.
Yes.
And also too, we wanted to elevate in terms of a lot of people out there are drinking warm lemon water or warm teas in the morning, or even throwing like ginger in their tea or something like that. So this isn't like an all or nothing. Like many times we're adding this on top of other teas we're drinking, mixing it together. I think that's what Dahlia did right now. You did a turmeric latte and added gut nurture to it. So we kind of want to just kick up even this daily habit that a lot of people already have of drinking a warm beverage in the morning, kind of taking it up a notch, especially if you need these like soil amendments, right? Like for your inner ecosystem. And it's like, why not still have that nice warm ginger beverage, but with all these other added benefits that are going to be amazing for your gut. So yeah, I was just kind of thinking around that a little bit as well.
As little as 2 weeks, you can see benefits, but 3 months is really the time that we're suggesting that people take it. And then because, it's been out there for about 6 months now, we have people who are like, I still just am maintaining it because I really enjoy it, and they'll cook with it, or I'll add it into my oatmeal or my dairy-free yogurt, or I make sauces with it. If it's like a ginger-based sauce, I'll make salad dressing out of it or a dip. So it's just also, again, if you want to sprinkle in some extra good gut vibes, you can always do that.
And I can speak to that where I don't have gut issues. I don't have a history of gut issues like Dahlia. Dahlia has a history of IBS.
James. Jeez.
I know. I know that.
I'm so jealous. You guys.
I know.
I can feed him anything. It's just like, whatever. Like, he doesn't have any issues. Just anyway.
Us husbands can be like human garbage disposal
It's just
sometimes.
not fair. He literally is. He just eats whatever and it's fine.
Yeah, and that's why we've taken gut nurture just like traveling, but I still will drink it. So it's not like something to say, okay, you're going to stop this here or only take it for this. It's like, yeah, you can do it in a therapeutic fashion for sure and work with a dietitian. It can be used, and that's why we formulate it in a therapeutic way, but also just maintenance. And whether it's like twice a week or 3 times a week, or when you travel, or even when you are feeling under the weather, or you've come across food poisoning and you're drinking that warm beverage, like have it be gut nurture, because you are getting amazing ingredients that are third-party tested, that we've sourced of the highest quality, and they're shown to really nurture that inner ecosystem. It's like, why not do that versus just like a warm lemon water? You can still do the lemon with it if you want, but it has lemon extract in it, and it's a win-win. So so that's still something I put in my smoothies, that I drink in my tea, or just by itself as a warm beverage. Yeah, our daughter, who's 8, will drink it. And
I would say the only person that really this isn't for is someone who's pregnant, just because the deglycerinated licorice root is higher than the recommended doses for those who are pregnant. But outside of that, kids can take it, adults can take it.
I was just going to talk about licorice, because I'm obsessed with licorice root tea. It is just so sweet. And I'm like, how is this so sweet? I feel like I'm cheating, I feel like I'm like, it's so good. And I love it with like nettles, and I'll do rose hips. I love licorice. I mean, it's like the base to all of my tea blends. So what is the benefit of licorice root for our gut? And what did you say it is? It's like a special, it's what licorice? Like I don't even know if I'm saying this 100% appropriately, but it's deglycerinated. So they've taken a certain compound called glycyrrhizine. I don't come after me if I didn't say that correctly. But that can actually affect your blood pressure negatively. So it can cause high blood pressure for people. So they've removed that compound from the licorice root. And so it's safe to take. But it has been shown in studies to help with reflux. So this DGL licorice root in and of itself, it has this property that helps with soothing acidity and also helping to kind of bolster the lining of the mucus that lines our esophagus, our stomach, our small intestine, our colon. So it helps to really feed into that mucosal layer and feed into that barrier. Got it. Okay. Well, it's amazing. I've got, and when you buy from Complement, which is what this gut nurture is underneath that brand name. This is just, this is the protein powder brand that I recommend, the unflavored, organic, third-party tested, heavy metal tested, and the supplement, if you will, the daily complement to your diet. If you want to take like a multivitamin, if you will, they plant a tree for every sale. They're doing good. The packaging is biodegradable. It's just a great, wonderful brand. So I highly, highly recommend. Is there anything else special in here that you want to talk about that's in gut nurture before we move on?
Yeah, I think the last noteworthy ingredient is the horse chestnut, which again, going back to inflammation and how inflammatory the gut can become for many reasons. Horse chestnut is an amazing anti-inflammatory that has been used for many, many centuries in many, many cultures. So we wanted to make sure also, again, if we're trying to help with things that come as a result of inflammation, like low B vitamin levels, low molybdenum, then we wanted to say, hey, let's throw in some ginger, let's throw in some DGL, let's throw in some horse chestnut. We want to make sure that we're actually helping to decrease inflammation. So this can just have increased efficacy. So we tried to be very, very mindful of what we were putting in, how much we were putting in. For those who don't necessarily love the taste, one thing that we can suggest is getting capsules and putting it in there. So they can take it as a capsule. Maybe they aren't a ginger person, but they want the benefits of it. So that's always another option as well, to say like, hey, let me just buy some, natural organic capsules, empty capsules at my local health food store. I can spoon a little bit of this into the capsules and I can take it that way.
Hey, real quick, I have 2 invitations for you that are happening in the month of February. First off, you're invited to the Plant Revolution Live. This is my 1-hour masterclass to help you prevent disease and live well with plants. The Plant Revolution will help teach you about the biggest myths in plant nutrition, what our body needs, and how to get the best nutrition from whole plant foods, what eating plants does for us in terms of disease prevention, and how to actually implement a pattern of eating that incorporates more plant foods into your life. Make sure you click the link down in the show notes or visit theurbanpharmacy.com/2023 events to be sure that you are registered. All right, talk to you soon. So I took some questions from my followers, from people within my ecosystem. And the questions that came up were about probiotics, constipation, and just digestive issues in general. It seems as though people are having, just so many people have digestive issues. When I write a newsletter about digestion, and I am I'm not a dietitian. I am a nutritionist. I study nutrition, but and I'm not a doctor. But when I write about it, high level, just surface level stuff, people like the open rate is very high, and people, it seems as though everybody's having some sort of issue. I want to talk about constipation right now. I want to know what your guys' first recommendation for people that are having constipation. I feel like that's just like, Stacey, you can't ask that because that's just so like, you don't have details. You don't know what they're eating, all the things. But like for people that come to you and they have chronic constipation, they are good sometimes, but then like the next day they're not. They're getting frustrated. They're throwing medications left and right because they're going to doctors that are telling them to take whatever. What do you suggest? Because I feel like constipation's huge, at least for people that I'm working with.
Yeah, definitely. I see this day in and day out working with my patients, that they're so frustrated that they either just have constipation regularly, randomly, or alternating diarrhea and constipation, and they're trying to understand it. And often these people who do have alternating diarrhea and constipation, it's something called overflow diarrhea that happens as a result of being so constipated. So the body's just trying to wash out the stool, and it's like, let me just pour in a bunch of water into the gut, into the colon, whatever I can get out, great. So they're like, I don't get it. Why do I have diarrhea when I'm so constipated? Well, it's because you're constipated. So first things first, really foundational basics. Make sure you're hydrating enough, especially if you have a high fiber diet. I can't even tell you how many times people are like, yeah, I eat all this fiber, but I'm so busy, I just forget to drink water, and like, I'm just not really good at that. And I'm like, oh, you need to hydrate that fiber, because like I was saying, some of the fiber is like a mop. And if you do not wet that mop, it's not going to have great results. And if anything, it's almost like one of those little kids' toys, right? That grow, those little sponges. And if you have a bunch of those in your gut and they're just growing in there without enough water, it's going to create a little bit of a blockage. So hydration, such an amazing foundational pillar that I think is underrated, because I cannot tell you how many of my patients are dehydrated. Movement. So I love, Stacey, that you're on your treadmill right now.
It's integral. If I want to have regularity, I have to move.
Yeah,
I mean,
same. Absolutely. And I have one too. So even for those who work at home, like, make it work, get a standing desk, use a treadmill, keep moving. James has a bike.
Bicycle desk. Yeah.
Love it.
So, even whether your job is supposed to be sedentary or not, you can always bring in things that you can make it work with. So get in that movement. Physically moving those bowels will physically move the stool along. So that is so important. Eating enough fiber, but making sure you're also not eating too much if you are having motility issues. The analogy that I like to give is it's almost like a big hairball that gets caught in a drain. So people, I think, tend not to realize that if there's a clog in the drain, or if, part of the drain isn't moving and flowing quite as well, maybe someone's having motility issues and they're just putting in more and more and more fiber. Again, they can feel that something's stuck and they're like, I just feel like nothing can get around it. Sometimes I'll have this diarrhea, but again, it's like you're pouring all these things down your drain, but the hairball is just so dense, nothing's going to move it through and move past it. So sometimes it's pulling back from fiber for a little bit until you work on your gut issues. I have recently had a patient say, that's how I feel. She's like, you nailed it. That's exactly how I feel. Like there's like a hairball stuck in my intestines. Sure enough, her care team found out she has a bladder and pelvic floor prolapse. So the muscles that hold up her rectum, her colon, her bladder, her reproductive organs, including her uterus and her ovaries, they were prolapsed, and her bladder was basically prolapsed, poking through them. That's going to affect your motility. Everything's getting pulled down. So for her, that was the thing. She's suffered from this terrible bloat, lower belly bloat, constipation for years. It's been getting worse. She's tried all the things. She tried a low FODMAP diet. She did test positive for something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, took care of that with her care team. But she's like, I'm still bloated. She tried low histamine, made it a little better. So sure enough, physiologically, her GI tract was off. So she needed to correct that before things could move through freely. So I think those are the basics: hydrating, eating the fiber, but not too much, moving, and
Yeah, and then just to kind of summarize that really quickly, I mean, going back to an analogy as far as the ecosystem, it's like there are times with human input, because again, we're mainly off balance because of our own design, right? We live in cities, we're sedentary, we take tons of antibiotics, we're eating highly refined foods, the list goes on and on. So typically when there's a human intervention that causes a disruption, we also see that in nature. There's been many times along a river, which our gut really resembles this beautiful flowing river. There was a human intervention that then caused, let's say, the beaver population to explode, right? Maybe we killed too many coyotes or too many wolves, which this has happened. This is a real example where farmers and ranchers killed a lot of the predators in an ecosystem to protect their cattle. And this made the deer and beaver population explode. So what do beavers like to do? They like to build dams, right? They like to cut down the trees and build dams. This made the water backflow and caused massive flooding along communities that were close to the riverbank. And so they're like, what the heck? Where's all this flooding coming from? And so it's a really great metaphor to what can happen in your gut, right? When what we have to understand is that these microbes in our gut are like little communities, right? They're like little ecosystems. And when we get, let's say, it's easy to call them bad, but really like beavers serve a purpose, rats and hyenas and all these things I wouldn't want to be in the same room with, right? Like a bunch of rats or hyenas, but they serve a purpose. What can happen is in this disarray, certain populations explode, and that can happen in your gut at various parts of your gut. And when these populations explode and become overpopulated, they can also give feedback to the surrounding nerves to say, hey, slow down, relax, don't do your job. We like it this way. We like it to be swampy and flooded and backed up. We're going to be constipated. And we like that because that means we can multiply more. Certain microbes like that. So we see that again in macro examples and in micro examples. And so then that's really getting into the weeds with your care team and exploring, going, okay, which population is this? What is exactly going on? So we have like a targeted, actionable, sustainable plan of where it can be targeted, but then it helps you get back to the general idea of going, hey, I need to do a lot of the basics, like Dahlia mentioned, to keep my river and my ecosystem healthy. And the goal isn't to like kill all the bad guys, the wolves and the rats and the hyenas, because you don't know the ripple effect that can happen from that, right? When we have this like kill mindset of like, take another round of antibiotics, or, oh, your gut hurts, here, take this medication for reflux,
or antimicrobials,
too. The same is true for other supplements, right? Too many herbal antimicrobials can also do this. We have patients that are like, I've been on herbal antimicrobials for years, and it's like, oh man, you're not understanding the ripple effects that can happen, because this is a very tight-knit ecosystem. So
I know a lot
it's
of,
pretty crazy.
well, not a lot, but I know a few people who will take like oil of oregano like every day. I'm like, guys, that's a little extreme. It's a little extreme on the gut. That's kind of killing, it's killing probably some good things in there. Okay. I really want to ask you guys about the fiber thing. Do you have a list of foods that you recommend for people? You're saying too much fiber can be a problem. I probably am one of those people that I'm obsessed with fiber, and I try to teach people to get more fiber because most people aren't getting enough at all. But my gut does feel better like when I eat white rice versus brown rice sometimes, especially right now, because I think I definitely have something going on from eating some bad zucchini, I'm pretty sure. But what are some plant foods that are lower in fiber, that aren't going to destroy our blood sugar? What are your suggestions there?
Yeah, I mean, no, like you said, like it can be simpler grains, and there is an actual spectrum, right? So we did create like a food spectrum, like a grain digestion spectrum and a legume digestion spectrum for our patients, which does kind of tease out lower fiber options. Because even, let's say, I mean, it's so broad to say, eat more beans, eat more legumes. There are like so many different types of legumes, right? That's encompassing like lentils and peas and other beans. And so, yeah, a kidney bean is not the same as a lentil in terms of fiber content and in terms of other nutrients like phytates and oxalates. And things like that can be, especially for someone experiencing dysbiosis, it can cause issues. So, but sticking with the fiber, you have to understand, there is a spectrum. So if you are struggling a bit, you can definitely start at the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to fiber in even the legume category, right? So it can be things like mung beans, it can be things like lentils,
chickpeas.
And then even the methods of which you cook them can be very, very helpful.
Because there are these layers. I was just talking with a patient about this yesterday. Think of trying, if you're recognizing, especially maybe motility is off, maybe you are a woman who's had pelvic floor issues, and so things just aren't going to move through. So maybe you don't want to be eating as much solid, high insoluble broom type fiber roughage. Maybe you're recognizing like, it's easier when I'm eating soluble fiber because it kind of slides right through my GI tract lubricated rather than pushing through a bunch of kale and apples. So maybe you are someone like that, but there are even layers to breaking things down. So we were talking yesterday, my patient was like, man, I want to start eating onions again. Like this is becoming a pain that I can't tolerate onions. So I was like, okay, let's do our best to try to break down or hydrolyze, if you will, these onions before they even get put in your mouth. So she and I talked about things like soaking them or maybe pickling onions. So that's one layer of breaking things down. Maybe you're also soaking beans, soaking nuts, soaking things, soaking your grains. That's breaking down some of the fiber as well and hydrating it. You can also freeze things. So maybe she's pickling onions, then she's freezing them after they've been pickled. Freezing is also when the ice crystals form, it's going to break apart some of the cellulose fiber. So again, it's kind of like pre-digesting it before it even gets in your mouth. You can cook things or even pressure cook them if you really thoroughly want to break down that fiber. You can also blend things. So with this patient, we created this action plan of saying, okay, let's have you do that. Let's have you do all these things. You're going to pickle onions, or she's like, I have pickled onions in the fridge right now. I want to try this. So I was like, okay, they're pickled, they're soaked. Let's have you cook them. Let's have you then blend them, and let's have you keep it as a paste in the freezer. So there are 4 layers of you breaking down that onion before it even gets into you. So it could be something like that. You're pre-breaking down these foods. Like James was saying, if you want to start on the lower end, maybe you're starting with those soluble fibers that drink up water. So you're eating whole, you're eating grains, whether they're 100% whole, or again, maybe it's white rice with brown rice, or maybe you're like, I just feel better with white rice right now. I'm going to put brown rice to the side. Great. Maybe it's potatoes, where there is a little bit of that broom, that insoluble skin there, but widely it's soluble. It's that starchy flesh inside. So you're eating lots of potatoes. Beans, again, same with potatoes. Yes, there is a skin on there, but that inside is very soluble. So maybe you're sticking to some more of those things. You're adding things like green banana flour, or you're eating green bananas. You're eating plantains. You're eating okra. You're eating aloe. You're eating cactus. You're eating some more of those gooey foods, again, to try to decrease the burden on your gut, but also create a plan to strengthen your gut if you do find motility is a big thing for you.
Yeah. And to clarify, it doesn't mean, you have to eat white bread and crackers and like all these things.
Yeah. That's what I'm kind of envisioning. I'm thinking like white pasta. Cause when I just hear lower fiber, cause I heard Dr. B say that originally, like, and when you're prepping for a colonoscopy, which I've never done, but like, I understand that you're supposed to eat lower fiber foods. I'm like, does this mean only fruit juice? And like, are we taking the fiber out? Are we drinking the fruit juice? Are we eating white pasta? Like, what does this look like? Or are we just looking at specific whole plant? Like, we're still able to get whole plant foods in, and we just kind of need to understand which ones are at the lower fiber range. Is that kind of how it is? Okay.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Because you still want to eat plants, but there, like Dahlia said, there's techniques and there's processes. Like process doesn't mean bad, right? I think it more like hyper refined can kind of lean that way, but process, like
tofu is typically easier. Tofu is easier to digest typically, right, for people than maybe the whole soybean.
Yeah.
Well, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So and tofu is still extremely healthy and beneficial. Even white rice. I mean, white rice, I know white rice gets a bad rap, but like it still has great starch that can feed your gut microbes, right? Like it's not like all or nothing here. So and this is where it's very individualized, depending on how severe your dysbiosis is, depending on what's been going on and for how many decades. Maybe it's just been years, maybe it's been decades. Like, that will depend or be the determinant of where you start on this kind of spectrum and what you kind of have to do to rebuild a bit here, because that's essentially what we're doing. We're kind of rebuilding your gut microbiome by putting the proper inputs in, right? It's again, how hard is the soil, right? Has it been completely desolate and like sunburned for decades, or was it just let go a year ago and now we got to rebuild it a little bit? So it's super, super individualized.
This is a kind of a side note. You mentioned aloe. You guys have talked about aloe. Yeah. What do you think? Do you think that aloe is safe to consume? This was just a question that a client of mine asked, and I said, I don't think it's supposed to be eaten every day, but I didn't say for sure that was my definite answer. I was just, that from what I've heard, maybe not so much, because we could potentially become dependent on it. Is that true? Tell me about aloe. I know there's aloe leaf, like juice. I know there's the aloe leaf, that you can cut open and get the inside. Like, tell me a little bit more about aloe, because I think that people who do have motility issues need to know about it, but also what are the things that we should be cautious about?
Yeah. So great question. There are different types of aloe. There's female and there's male, and I'll need to go back and I'll need to double check, but I want to say the one that's spiky on the outsides is a female aloe. I want to say. I think I remember that because I was like, sometimes I'm a little prickly. But I want to say the female, you're not supposed to consume because it's much higher in latex, and because aloe is in the latex family. So if you have a latex allergy, do not eat aloe. It's not for you. It's not going to go well. But I want to say the female aloe, and James, you can correct me if I'm wrong. That one really is not for consumption. It's more for external topical use for burns and things like that. But the other one, if it's the male that I'm correct with, that isn't spiky, that one can be used regularly. So that, again, has that soluble fiber component to it. So now you can go to the grocery store and they sell frozen chunks of that consumable aloe. And that's perfectly safe to consume. There's different breeds of aloe. There's something called Cape aloe, and that's often used in some of these supplements for constipation. That one is a little bit different in its nature. And that, again, in a highly concentrated supplement form, yes, can cause dependency on it. So I know Dr. B has talked about that of, not becoming dependent on aloe. And that's usually Cape aloe, which is a specific type of aloe that's put into some of these supplements. So I wouldn't supplement with aloe because at those high doses, or even supplement with things like senna or Cascara sagrada, or any of these other things that are really meant to just induce diarrhea, to be honest, because they can cause what's called lazy colon. They can cause dependency. But if you're eating, if you put like a couple inches of edible aloe into your smoothie, or you're blending that into your water, that can actually have benefits to it.
Wonderful. You talked about dysbiosis. I think we even covered that in our original episode, but you guys have more information coming out about dysbiosis and SIBO. Can we talk about both of them? Because again, I really do think that most people are walking around with one or the other.
Yeah. And I think,
and I need to get tested.
Yeah. And to give you all comfort, or anybody who's watching, I mean, dysbiosis can happen to anybody. And there's various levels of dysbiosis, and there's various areas. Like, to say dysbiosis is this big umbrella, right? Like you can have dysbiosis in your nose, in your mouth, in your on your skin. Like, to speak more specifically, like gut dysbiosis, and even then that's still a larger umbrella. And then under there could be IBS and IBD, and then we get into the weeds a little bit, like specific chronic disease that you're experiencing within that. And so really dysbiosis is just to say that imbalance, right? Like you have an imbalance, and it could be for a number of reasons. And so just what we've done over the years is just refine kind of our perspective and niche on that based on the evidence and the research, where I think for a long time, and even coming up as dietitians, which we've been dietitians for 10 years now, which is crazy. But I remember learning about low residue diets. And this is insane, right? I mean, just to even call fiber a residue, like that's their name for fiber. It's insulting. Like, how dare you? Fiber is the essential carbohydrate, right? Like we hear of essential amino acids, essential fatty acids. We don't hear about essential carbohydrates. Fiber is that, right? We can't make fiber in our body. We have to get it from our diet. So that's what makes it essential. And to call it a residue was like, it always irked me. And then come to find out, it's like, oh, what are we prescribing these low residue diets for? It's these chronic conditions that are because people are already on a low residue diet, right? A low fiber diet, which got them in the situation. And then we're trying to get them out of the situation with even lower of a fiber diet. So that never made sense to me. And sure enough, it doesn't make sense, right? So, but we understand. And I think this is where a lot of the confusion comes in, because when you're experiencing severe gut issues, you're not going to go out and get like a raw kale salad and just go, this is what I want for lunch, right? That is likely going to cause those symptoms to increase, but it's not because of the kale salad. I think we are finally, I think, realizing that we got to put the focus away from the food a little bit and look a little more inward and go, what have I been doing the last 15, 20, 30 years? Or what happened maybe recently when I went to India or Thailand or Africa, or, and I was traveling and I was exposed to something. And it's really understanding your context and your past medical history and your experiences and going, oh, that car accident that threw off my pelvic floor, that then caused my motility. So many people have their own kind of path and backstory. that if you follow that, you then realize, oh, I shouldn't have been demonizing plants this whole time. Like they actually can help me in the right context. So
but sometimes they won't always feel so good.
Right.
And the issues there.
And so we were seeing this context of like, oh, you have dysbiosis or SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Okay, eat lots of chicken breast and steak and just get away from all fiber and just eat more animal products. And we were like, no, there's a better way to do this. So that's kind of where this all came from.
Yeah. And, when we started really diving into the world of SIBO and IBS, 6-7 years ago, there wasn't a lot out there for those who were plant-based. And we were already, 5 years plant-based at that point. And we were hearing that from other vegans of, well, my doctor asked me to go low FODMAP, which is low fermentation. So low fermentable carbohydrates. But they just told me to eat more fish and eggs because they said, a lot of plant foods aren't low FODMAP. So in the last 5 years, especially, I think we've understood a lot more about plants for those who are plant-based, but we've also understood a lot more about the gut. Mm-hmm. And really, it's only been in the last 20 years or so that SIBO has been even understood or studied, or we've been producing a lot of evidence around SIBO. Before that, it was kind of just under this catch-all umbrella of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And so it was kind of just like, I equate it to like fibromyalgia of like, you're in pain. We don't know why you have fibromyalgia. The gut also, which is, we know IBS is a gut brain disorder. But for a long time, it was your gut's in pain. I can't figure out why. We did a colonoscopy and endoscopy. Everything looks okay, but you don't feel okay. So we're going to diagnose you with IBS because you have had this change in your stool patterns, in pain that you've experienced in your gut. So you do meet this criteria of getting diagnosed with IBS, but we're still not helping you get to the root. Mm-hmm. So we really wanted to say, okay, we know that SIBO is the thing. It's starting even now to become more studied, where we're finding that studies show anywhere from 14 to 70% of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, is actually SIBO. So with so many people walking around with this IBS diagnosis, anywhere from 5 to 15% of the US population has IBS and an IBS diagnosis. We do know also that 14 to 70% of those IBS people actually have SIBO, which is, like James was saying, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And what that means is we have our GI tract, and I like to give this like little 30-second crash course of our GI tract is everything from mouth to anus. So we have our mouth, we chew the food, swallow the food, digest the food with some digestive enzymes, we swallow it, goes down our esophagus, a little door opens, allows it to go into the stomach, another little door opens once it's had stomach acid pumped through it and the stomach physically crushes the food, goes to the small intestine, where we're digesting and absorbing a lot of that food. Not a lot of microbes live in the small intestine, where a majority of them are through the last little door, in the colon, the large intestine. So we have a majority of our microbes are in our GI tract living in the colon. And there's over 100 trillion microbes living in our GI tract. And again, a large predominant percentage of them are in the colon. So whether they are not getting fed, because again, maybe you're constipated and they're like, that's old news. That's been there. I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm looking to ferment some new stuff, but you're still constipated. Nothing new is really coming through yet. Or again, maybe there's just imbalance where there's more of that inflammatory bacteria and other microbes. And they're like, this just isn't enough for us. We got this. We want more. We're greedy. So they'll open that little door and they'll enter into the small intestine. And some of my patients will even say like, oh yeah, I'll ask them, do you have pain like between your right hip and your belly button? Do you ever feel like it kind of sticks out there? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, that's the little door going from your small intestine to your large intestine. So these bacteria and other microbes, they'll creep up in the small intestine because they're like, ooh, food party. And they'll start fermenting all this undigested, unabsorbed food. And that's when people feel so extremely bloated. One of the most common things my patients with SIBO will say is, I wake up with a pretty flat stomach. And by the end of the day, I either look and feel 6 months pregnant, or I just feel it. It's not always visible bloat. It might just be that distension, or that physical sensation of bloat, but they might look distended, or vice versa. So people are really bloated. They might have constipation, depending on what type of SIBO they have. They might have diarrhea. They might have alternating constipation diarrhea. They could have that stinky sulfuric gas. They could have fungal overgrowth and the symptoms that come with that. But we wanted to really support people who are going through this, because we just don't think that not eating fiber is the way to go. It's really identifying the root and rebalancing.
Yeah, it really is like a Band-Aid. And there's people just want to feel better. So I have sympathy for everybody that is like in the functional nutrition space, but are still just recommending tons of animal foods, low fiber foods. People just want to feel better. And also the practitioners want to help their clients and their patients feel better. I totally get it. But just like anything, like with this over prescribing of antibiotics, etc., it's really not fixing human health long term at all. And also, recommending these like excessive animal foods just to make people's guts feel better. Like, it's also, of course, destroying the earth. But I think that, and Dahlia, did you have IBS? Or what did you experience? Yeah. You personally experienced IBS. So, and I definitely, like I said, I'm getting some tests done, because I've definitely experienced some extreme bloating. It's not every day, but I'm like, what is going on? And so I think there's so many people that do experience that. And you guys have something coming up, right? Can we talk about that might help people like start to heal with plants?
Yes, with plants. So we have one of, if not the only 100% plant-based SIBO IBS program. And this is something we have launched previously that we tested, and it went really well. This is something we've been using in our practice as a curriculum of sorts, and a pathway for our patients to go down, that are like, hey, I want to eat plants, right? Like, I don't want to go like keto or carnivore to help my gut health, because it's not really, long-term sustainably helping your gut health. So yes, we have like 100% plant-based SIBO IBS program that is going to relaunch. And and if depending when you're watching this, if you go to marytouth.com, you can get on our email list. You might see a wait list there as well. And that's going to be relaunching, because we have a lot of patients coming in who need the resources kind of all put together in a really well done way. And
we went back and forth. We were like, do we call it masterclass? Because we really want to give the information as the why, not just like, here, eat this. So it is a program, and there's actually facets of the program. So someone can say, I'm more constipated, and we'll suggest, hey, you should do this low FODMAP. Or someone will say, I have diarrhea, and we'll say, okay, we suggest this for you. So there's actually 4 different tracks for people to go down. Actually, no, there's a couple more than that. But we've combined things as well. So they will get the recipes and the meal plans for whatever track they go down, but they also get information. And we're not just involving us, we're involving incredible gastroenterologists, a primary care, an integrative plant-based primary care practitioner, a pelvic floor therapist, one of our dietitians on our team who is certified in neo-emotional release. So she'll talk all about emotions and the gut. We really want people to understand all of the different facets of this, and so they can pinpoint why they have these symptoms, when they came from. It's like, oh man, yeah, it was that one time I got food poisoning when I went to Mexico, and it's just messed up my motility ever since. But we want people to really look back and say, okay, I know when, I know why, and now I know what to do about it.
And we're really promoting this as like, hey, don't join if you're not ready to do the work. Like, we're not here trying to be like, this is going to be great. In 30 days, you're going to be healed, and this is going to be excellent. No, are you ready to do the work? If you're ready to do the work, then join this program. If not, we have other e-guides, or maybe, you could schedule a visit or all that, but we're really trying to make this comprehensive where you have a care team behind you. You can work with one of our dietitians. You can have all these resources. You'll have a support group. You can go down one of these many tracks and get the meal plans and the grocery list and everything you need. But at the end of the day, you are doing this. You are putting in this work. We are just the guides. You are the climber up this mountain, right? So I think sometimes people go into programs of like, oh, great, they're gonna do everything for me. It's gonna solve everything. It's like, no, you're doing the work.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's important. So we're not here to say like, yeah, this is gonna solve all your problems. It's like, no, you may find out you have severe emotional trauma at the root of what's going on. And then you may need to have a whole nother multiple years of therapy for that. I mean, let's be honest. We do find that in our patients. So get ready to peel back layers and understand and take action. And we'll see how far these layers go so that you can be the best you possible, so that you can optimize your health. But again, that's you optimizing your health. We are curating and giving experience and giving resources. You are the one optimizing at the end of the day.
And I think part of that experience is also because we've been plant-based ourselves for so long and in the plant-based community, it's also really highlighting, because I think so much shame comes with this for a lot of people, of plants are a big part, but they are not the only part. Because I think so many people say, but I went plant-based, my gut issues are still here. I must not be doing it right. I must be failing. And it's, if you have pelvic floor issues or significant trauma, or you have post-infectious IBS because you got terrible food poisoning and your motility is now off, the plants are not always going to undo that, right? If you have childhood trauma, eating plant-based is not going to undo your childhood trauma.
Environmental toxins for decades,
Yeah.
exposures. I mean, there's so many things out there that's like, okay, switching to a plant-based diet in your 30s or 40s or 50s. It will help, but it might not be able to undo things that happened when you were maybe a fetus in the womb, right? Decades ago. So it's understanding that, but you're definitely on the right path, and it's never too late. So there's definitely hope with a healthy dose of reality of going, okay, it's going to take more work than 2 weeks on a plant-based diet, so.
And stress reduction. Reduction. I mean, your body's not going to focus on digestion if you're always in fight or flight. It's just not going to happen. Something
and that is the emotional aspect of it, right? You're not going to be able to reproduce. You're not going to be able to digest. You're not going to be able to sleep. If you're in a constant state of heightened stress, right? So if your body is spinning these plates and barely trying to hold on, how is it going to be able to rest, digest, feed, breed? I mean, all these beautiful things our body's meant to do. So that might be at the root and at the core for so many people that they don't even realize. So yeah, a lot there for sure.
So good. So good. Okay, you guys, I actually have one more question. This was from a follower, and I want to make sure it actually is about gut nurture. Sorry, I missed this at the beginning. Is this good for all ages? Is gut nurture good for all ages? Because the reader was actually asking, do kids, for kids probiotics, do kids need to be taking probiotics, prebiotics, do they need to be taking them this day and age? And is this okay for them?
So yeah, that's a great question. Kids need to be eating probiotic foods just like we all do. Yeah. So we would suggest that just like adults, kids are also getting in a wide variety of probiotic foods, whether that's a nice miso, a dairy-free yogurt, a coconut kefir, maybe it's sauerkraut or kimchi, kombucha, all this variety.
To add to that, raw foods too, fresh fruits and vegetables also will have microbes on them. So they have basically in the tissue of the fruits and vegetables and on the surface of the fruits and vegetables, there will be microbes. Now, again, you can't classify all those as probiotic. We'll see what happens when they get in your gut, but that is also where you're seeding your gut microbiome as well.
So if a kid is eating their probiotics, then they really should not be needing to take probiotics. Again, unless something happened. I'm not saying I never give my daughter probiotics. For example, last year through her school, there was a horrible outbreak of norovirus where literally almost every child at the school and every staff member and teacher got norovirus. And it's a terrible stomach virus. So her gut was hurt. And I gave her some probiotics after that, and she was eating probiotic foods and things. So I'm not saying no, it's never appropriate to give your children a specifically tailored probiotic for what they're needing, but they should eat probiotic foods. And they certainly can use gut nurture as a nice prebiotic nurture for those probiotic foods they're eating, as well as the probiotics that are already in their gut. And we do know also studies show that the first 1,000 days of life are most impactful to a child's gut. So that includes mom's pregnancy and those first 1,000 days up to about 2 years old. So that's about the first 3 years, including mom's pregnancy. But in that time, if mom has passed on a healthy microbiome, if she was able to have a vaginal delivery or even a C-section where they did a vaginal swab on baby's face and inoculated with mom's vaginal microbiome, if baby was breastfed in the first, hopefully the first 6 months, ideally the first year or two of life or more, if someone chooses to, those are all such important pre and probiotics that they're getting right there. Then once they start eating, they're eating again, these prebiotics, they're eating probiotics, but yeah, they can certainly take gut nurture. The only person I wouldn't recommend it for, as I mentioned, was pregnant women.
Got it. Wonderful. Perfect. Do you guys have any closing remarks? I mean, we will absolutely say in the intro where to find you, but anything else you want to talk about before we close today?
I love that. I mean, since that question was about kids and moms, I think realizing moms watching and any females out there that plan to get pregnant and do one of the most amazing things you can do in this world, which is have a child and nurture that child. I think realizing like one of the best inheritances you can give them is your microbiome. And really, I have to hand it to the women in this world. The women are kind of the bearers of this gift. Men can play a part. Dads can do skin to skin. And when you kiss your kids, dads, you're giving them microbes as well. But there's amazing studies on this, who you cohabitate with, who you're kissing and hugging and just being in contact with, you will resemble their microbiome. So especially mothers, the breast milk, the vaginal flora, the skin to skin, the kisses, you are giving your kids one of the most amazing gifts you can give them. So really take this message however you want to take it, whether that's strengthening your microbiome before you have kids, during and after. It's never too late, but that is going to set them up for an amazing trajectory. Or, I mean, if things aren't going well, it's understanding this could be kind of a little bit of a monkey wrench, but
it's like a debt they're inheriting.
A debt, yeah, you can think of it like that. It could be an inheritance or it could be a debt, right? Mm-hmm. So, but it's never too late to get out of the debt. It's also never too late to also increase that inheritance. So,
and yes, we help people when they already have issues, SIBO and IBS, but we also just have this passion for prevention. So we have resources for all. We have our Good Gut A to Z ebook that's available on our website for maybe they are a family who says, we just want to start eating new plants. And there's over 100 different plants that they can learn about in there, have recipes for, learn how to buy, cook, eat these things. So if you're looking for that prevention, we love sharing that side of our life because we also have a little gut that we're nurturing here in our home with our almost 8-year-old daughter. But if you are somebody who has encountered gut issues, or if you're like, ooh, emotional release, that sounds great, then they can connect with us as well. And we can be found at Married to Health on all platforms. We have resources on our website, on our social media outlets. So we'd love to connect on any level.
Love it. I send everybody that has gut issues to you guys. So
thank you.
You guys are the masters. I so appreciate you guys. And thank you so much for your time. And I will see you soon.
We will talk to you soon. Thank you. Thank you, Stacey. We always love these chats.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
I'm over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of The Urban Pharmacy. For today's show notes, head on over to theurbanpharmacy.com and be sure to join us inside our private Facebook group called The Urban Pharmacy, where we share inspiration, live trainings, and holistic living tips to help you build community and the healthy lifestyle that you've always wanted. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button and please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Before we connect again on the next show, follow me on Instagram at The Urban Pharmacy. That's urban with an H and pharmacy with an F. And I can't wait to hear your wellness journey as we get to know each other better. You know, there's truly no better time than now to level up your life, and I am so proud of you for showing up today. Until next time, be well, Health Crusader.